Consulting Incorporated, and I'm going to be talking this afternoon about good and bad uses for shipping containers in buildings. The first area I'm going to cover is bad uses, and the most horrible use that I can find for a shipping container is to bury it. I'm constantly getting called by people that want to bury shipping containers to build some sort of shelter, a storm shelter, or whatever. Architects wanting to pile dirt against the side of the containers. The problem is the inherent strength in the containers is not in the sides. There was a web posting I saw where I was quoted from my website saying that burying shipping containers was a bad idea, and somebody put up on that website, well, like they stack them like 40 high on container ships, and they stand that. Well, wrong on 2 points. One is they don't stack them 40 feet high. That would have a container ship with a stack about 400 feet up in the air. It wouldn't be a good idea in a windstorm for a start, and couldn't get under bridges. But I digress. The point is the shipping container strength, which you can stack them usually, I think it's 8 shipping containers high on a container ship. But the strength of the shipping containers is vertical. And also it has a lateral strength of the connections. The sides have no strength. Imagine we've got a case of beer. You can stack, maybe 20, 30 cases of beer, right? They stack right up perfectly. Take a beer can, you can just keep stacking cans of beer on up. You can take that beer can, you can stand on top of it probably. I probably couldn't, I'd probably crush it because I'm a bit overweight. But you take that beer can, you can stand on top of it, and a person that's not obese would not crush it. It would be fine if it's full of beer. Set that beer can on the side, it has no strength at all. You could not stack anything on the side of that case of beer. It would crush. Same thing goes to the shipping container. They're not built to have much strength on the sides. They can resist the wind loads. They can resist something hitting against them like a forklift without crumpling. But that's about it. And even if you hit it with a forklift, you're going to have to do some repairing afterwards. If you bury a container, you're putting all that soil pressure on the sides of those corrugations, and it's going to crush it. And if you look to my website and you go to look at some of the pictures, you can see pictures people posted on the internet where they buried a shipping container and it crushed like a beer can, like you went like that. It didn't work too well. Now I get people will say, well, what if I stiffen it? Well, yeah, you can do anything with anything, but why? I can make a buried structure by forming concrete walls or masonry walls, which will work a lot better and won't have the corrosion issues because you're burying that steel. You're asking for corrosion steel in issues. Now, I did have one guy call me. He calls me up, one buried containers, and he says, I told him it wasn't possible. He says, well, it's made out of Corten steel. I don't know why people that are so stupid have to have southern accents. If you're that stupid, please ditch the accent. I live down here in Georgia. You're an embarrassment to me. Corten steel is simply 50,000 psi yield steel. It is made that when it rusts, the rust forms a coating that prevents the rust of the corrosion from penetrating. It's used on bridges and stuff for corrosion resistant steel, but it's not 100% corrosion resistant. Shipping containers will rust through the sides in sea use because it just happens. It doesn't have any magic fairies in it that gives it some sort of special property like people seem to think on some of these websites where they talk about the magic of Corten steel. So, okay, you can't bury containers. Don't send me an email, ask me if you can do it. Don't call me and ask me to do it. No. The only difference between me and you, if you think you can bury the container, is I'm a structural engineer. You probably aren't. If you are and you think you can bury a shipping container, you need to go back to the school where you went to college and ask for your money back. All right. The other thing that for technical use of container is not good for, I get a lot of people call me that are survivalists. They want to build a shipping container house for when we get some sort of dystopian future and society breaks down and the mobs are out there raiding and trying to take stuff, and it's every man for himself, and you're trying to stay alive and you want to live off the grid so you can live out as the end times come. And we come out like the world, like in Divergent series trilogy, which, by the way, we worked on the set for that movie. A good movie, too, by the way. You should see it. book's good. I like the first book. Second book's kind of slow and repetitious. But anyway, I'm digressing. I don't understand why every time there's like a show about doomsday preppers and they show shipping containers, my website gets a bunch of hits and people call me. What is it about shipping containers that makes you think that it's going to save you when the world falls apart? The sides of the containers are 0.07 inches thick. That's enough to stop maybe a .22 caliber round. So yeah, I guess you're okay if the mobs come after you with baseball bats and .22 caliber rifles, but otherwise you're out of luck. Any larger caliber round, it'll go through that like a knife through butter. It's not going to protect you. If the end times are coming and they're raiding Home Depot, they're going to get tools that they can cut right through the container side anyway. Heck, if you really want to get through a container, you could probably do it with a drill and you had time, and you could do it with a hacksaw probably, as long as you're willing to spend the time. Think about where we have had some dystopian societies in recent times: Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Do you think living in a shipping container house in any of those countries is going to save you? No, it won't. No. So basically, no. It isn't a good idea. Okay, now another one, third world housing. We get people calling us up, and I saw a website. There was a website here. The guy was going to provide housing to all the poor people in the third world with shipping containers. He also took credit for a couple of houses I worked on designing, and he wasn't involved in them at all, but that's another story. Problem with using shipping containers in a third world, unless you're working at the port, you gotta transport them to where they are. Down unimproved roads, that means a truck, that means a crane. You're taking down unimproved roads. If you've ever been, like I've been to Honduras, if you've ever been down to Latin America, some parts of Latin America, or Iraq, I won't even get into that, or Afghanistan, the roads aren't the best in the world. It's difficult to get in, and you're going to have to build homes for people out of these things that you need to bring modern equipment, and you need to insulate it. It doesn't. If you have a shipping container home in a place with a hot temperature in the summer or year round, you're going to bake from the sun unless you insulate the hell out of it. So now you get a shipping container and you got to insulate it, and you want to insulate it with some sort of insulation that'll last and won't deteriorate in the bad climate. It starts to get bad. If it's a cold climate, you still have to insulate it because that metal has no insulation. There's also something vaguely racist about shipping containers for poor people in third world countries to me. For one thing, you're discounting their current technology in a lot of third world countries, which is mud bricks, which is a really good technology. It was developed 10,000 years ago when we first started building homes, maybe even further back. I wouldn't be surprised if hunter-gatherers probably did some work with mud bricks. It's an excellent technology. It doesn't require much equipment. You can make them virtually anywhere where you can get mud that's got a fairly high clay content that sticks to itself. You dry them out, you stack them up, it's easy to repair. It insulates very well in a place where there's like a war zone. It can absorb rounds and shrapnel very well, much better than a shipping container. And you don't have to have special equipment to haul it in. The mud brick technology that exists is perfect for where they use it. It would probably be even good here if I could get to the mud to repair my house and stuff. It's not a bad building material at all. It's very good. All right, so let's see. Next thing, leading off from that into two non-technical areas that I think it's a bad idea. Single-family homes. Everybody's got their ideas about a single-family home. You want to build a container house for yourself. Yeah, you're kind of stuck with 8-foot wide modules. You're going to spend a lot of money to stiffen them up, to open up the wide spaces people seem to want. You're going to be restricted where you can put your bathrooms. They have to stack up so we can run the water lines down. You're going to have some issues with trying to work out your HVAC because there's limited space for ductwork. There's a lot of issues there that make it a little bit on the expensive side. The other issue is how do you do it? How are you going to find a contractor to do one house that knows what the hell he's doing, that can deal with the cranes, the welding, and all that? It's almost commercial level knowledge required to build this thing, but you're going to use a residential, try to find a contractor to do a one-off thing on a small project. you might have a hard time finding a qualified contractor to pick it up. Um, and it's going to be expensive. They're not cheap for single family homes because it's a one-off thing. You're not going to get any of the benefits from production. So here you're going to spend 150, 200 bucks a square foot to build this house. Once you get through permitting, which may be giving you some problems there. You may take a lot of time during permitting because the building departments are kind of skeptical of these things. Then you get a more expensive house, then you're going to get the hassles with the contractors. Now, the other thing is who's going to design it for you. I'm sure you can find an architect, but you ain't getting me to design it. We won't do single family homes as a policy. I've done a couple, and no. The reason is it's too much trouble. Inexperienced contractor, unsophisticated owner, a lot of work. They don't want to pay the fees that a commercial job pays, but I end up putting as much work into it as a commercial job. So for me, it doesn't make sense. We just don't do it. And I say this over and over again on the website. Still people call, still people send emails. I hate to be mean, but I never return the emails or return the calls about that because I already told you. And I can't spend half an hour on the phone telling you over and over again. All right. Now, the very last one, and what it's not a good idea, and this is just a matter of taste and trying to get it through approval processes and everything. It's not a technical issue. Low-income housing. Now, you know, we could probably build a multifamily apartment buildings fairly inexpensive to provide housing for people of low income. But the problem is perception, because I've already run into this, and I've talked to other people who have seen this too. Putting poor people in boxes. When you drive down the road and you pass a high-end apartment development, let's say a condo development, real high-end, you see a big fence around it, you see guards at the gate. What do you think? You think, oh, look at the gated community to keep everybody out. The rich people are in there, keeping the poor out. That's the perception. Drive by a housing project and see the same thing. It looks like a prison for poor people, doesn't it? That's the perception. Look where the poor people live. They have to put a fence up around them and guards to keep them in. Same thing, different perception, different reality. Perception's reality. You build a housing development for poor people. Let's not even call it a project because project has bad connotations. Let's say we build a housing complex for low-income people out of shipping containers. You're putting poor people in boxes. They aren't going to want to live there. I talked to some people with an NGO that were trying to do that in Mexico, and the people didn't want them. They didn't want to live in boxes. Perception's reality. Going on to that, I got a call from a woman. She was going to provide veterans housing out of shipping containers, and immediately it made me angry. Perception. I'm a veteran. I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kuwait. Yeah, I was in the rear with the gear basically. My age, it was probably a good thing. I would be more danger to everybody if I was out there chasing the Taliban through the mountains with a pistol or something. But the thing is, I know a lot of people have had issues when they got out of the military. There's some real complex stuff. Most of us veterans get out, we go to real life, we make it, we do fine. There's a small number of guys that have had issues. A guy from my unit 40 years ago in the Army had some very serious issues, and if it wasn't for the help of many of us in my battalion, he probably would have been homeless. I don't know. It's a complex issue. You can't just throw up shipping container houses and solve all the problems. I talked to a couple of street people that said they were veterans, and I believe they were talking to them. Some of them were Vietnam era veterans like I was originally. My original service was 74 to 77. These guys were in after, that era that was still called Vietnam era, but we were out of Vietnam. Ended up homeless, one enlistment in the military. Was it the military that did it? Was it them? And who knows? And then you get people coming back with PTSD. That's a real thing. Every war has guys coming back with PTSD. Every war has guys come back, may not be what you call PTSD, but they have trouble adapting after being at war. That's pretty much how, like, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club was founded by World War II veterans, having trouble getting in, form their own brotherhood. And you're going to throw up shipping containers and solve it all. Kind of irritated me. Again, perception. And of course, we're going to put veterans in boxes. No. So, no, it's not a good thing. Forget the low-income housing. I don't think it'll go through the process. All right, good uses, student housing. The housing apartment building up near Catholic University that I worked on. Um, Man, it's perfect. The architect was Travis Price Architect. It's indestructible. You could have an animal house fraternity in every single one of those apartments, tearing, doing whatever they did. They're not going to hurt the building. Also provides about the right amount of living space per student, provides the right amount of privacy, provides the noise dampening per units. That's important because somebody could be having a party in the unit down below you. You don't hear it, which is good if you got a student that's studying a real subject like engineering, like I had to do, and you actually have to study instead of party your way through college. If you got somebody below you or beside you that's taking something simple and he parties his way through college, it doesn't have to ruin your time. So I think it's really good as student housing. Plus, you're doing it with the size, you can start to get the benefits from repetition, and the cost per square foot goes down. Shopping centers. Shopping centers are cool with shipping containers. I covered one in my research paper that they did in New Zealand. It was a temporary container project. It was the designer told me it was meant just to fill a stopgap till they could put up something permanent, just to provide a mall to replace something that had come down during the earthquake. It was so popular that the people didn't want it coming down, and they had to go back and retrofit things because it was not fit with the waterproofing and the roofing and stuff for a long period of time. So it really makes a cool shopping center. It attracts people. You can make small shops and stuff out of these things. It's really good. Following from that, like kiosks, like little restaurants and coffee shops and stuff. I believe Travis Price worked on a couple of ones up in Washington, D.C. like that. Really good there, too. Not much to say about that. Remote housing. Remote housing, like up in Canada, that's where the majority of the work I did back in like 2011, 12, 13, before the oil industry took its slump. Did a lot of housing and shops, offices up in northern Saskatchewan province. Really excellent because you can load them on the truck, haul them up. You can do all the fabrication in a shop where it's more temperate, put them on a truck. Now, you do have to have your crane. And again, remember I talked about this problem in a third world country. You do have to have access. It meant in Canada they had to haul them up during the winter on the ice roads, and they had to have a crane in place. Other places in Canada I haven't worked on, but some other people have that I know. They had to get in by barge. Same with other places in northern Alaska. Barge in the summertime, put them in place. They had a limited season in the summer to put them up. Where I was doing the projects in Canada, it was just the opposite. Long season in the winter, but it all had to be done in the winter while the ground was frozen. Very good for that type of thing. Now, my Canadian colleagues in 320 Modular are of the opinion that they can make the modular buildings without shipping containers and provide a lot more flexibility than containers. I'm not completely convinced that containers are a bad idea because you have the connectors on the corners, making them easier to lift. You can put them in a trailer easier, and you've got the basic structure built. So I think that's a good use. I hope this video is useful. It ran a bit longer than I expected to. I'm going to load it up to YouTube. If you like the video, please press like. If, put your comments below. Be glad to hear what you have to say. And thank you very much. And if this gets enough likes, I'll continue doing videos on containers. Thanks a lot. You have a good day. Bye.